Have you ever felt like a man was holding something back? Like there was a deeper, softer, more honest version of him hidden behind his words. But no matter how close you got, he never let you see it. That subtle distance, that invisible wall between who he is and who he pretends to be, leaves you wondering, is there a side of him that only shows up for someone truly special? The answer is yes. And here's the truth most women never hear. Every man has a version of himself reserved for the one woman he believes is different from all the rest. Not prettier, not more popular, but the one who makes him feel something deeper, something real. Men are taught from a young age to be strong, to be composed, to keep emotions under control. They're trained to lead, provide, protect, but rarely to open up, to trust, to reveal their wounds. So what happens? Most men build emotional armor so thick that even the women closest to them never fully break through. But there's an exception. When a man sees you as the one, everything changes. Not instantly, not dramatically, but in subtle, powerful ways. He starts showing sides of himself that he spent years hiding. Not because you forced it, not because you asked, but because something about your presence makes him feel safe. And that feeling of safety is rare. It's sacred. This video is not about guessing if a man loves you. It's not about decoding mixed signals or playing mind games. It's about recognizing the hidden behaviors that only emerge when a man's guard comes down. Completely. Because when it does, he begins to act differently. He stops performing and starts revealing. He stops chasing approval and starts offering authenticity. These changes are quiet, almost invisible to the untrained eye, but they're the most important signs of all. If you've ever wondered whether you're just another option or the woman who holds a place no one else could touch, keep watching. Because you're about to learn the truth most women never hear. The 9 signs that you're not just someone he likes. You're the one he sees a future with. The one he respects on a soul level, the one he instinctively protects, cherishes, and emotionally trusts. And only a tiny percentage of women ever see this side of a man, not because they're more beautiful, but because they carry something rare, emotional intelligence, inner peace, and self-respect. By the time this video ends, you'll understand what to look for. You'll know if you've seen this hidden side of him, or if you've been chasing someone who was never truly open in the first place. More importantly, you'll learn how to attract that deep, powerful connection that doesn't have to be forced. Because when a man shows these signs, it's not strategy, it's instinct, and instinct never lies. Stay with me. What you're about to discover could change everything you thought you knew about love. When a man starts to feel emotionally safe with a woman, something rare begins to unfold. He drops the performance. He no longer needs to impress. He no longer hides behind confidence that isn't real. Instead, he begins to show his fears, his flaws, and his doubts. And that is not weakness. That is trust. You'll see it in the way he pauses before speaking, not to choose the perfect words, but to tell the truth. You'll feel it in the way he opens up about his past, not for attention, but because he wants you to understand the man he's become. This is one of the clearest signs that you're not just someone to spend time with. You're someone he sees as emotionally safe. Someone who offers peace in a world that constantly demands he be someone else. Most men have spent their entire lives being told that vulnerability makes them less masculine, less desirable, less in control. So when he chooses to break that mold and reveal what he really feels, it's not a small act. It's a deep signal that you matter more than his fear of being seen. He lets you in, not fully at once, but enough to show you he wants more than surface. He may not use the word love, but his actions whisper it through every quiet moment he lets his guard down. Because for a man, true connection isn't just about excitement, it's about peace. It's about finding someone who doesn't judge his emotions, but honors them. This emotional transparency can be uncomfortable to witness because it's raw. It may come out in silence, in confession, in late-night truths he's never said out loud. But if you're seeing this side of him, know this. It means he's trying to be better, trying to be known, trying to feel something real. And he's choosing you as the person he believes is safe enough to carry those fragile parts of himself. That's not ordinary, that's sacred. But many women miss this. They expect strength to look like stoicism. They mistake emotional openness for neediness. And in doing so, they shut the door on the very connection they crave. Don't fall into that trap. When a man trusts you enough to be real, hold that space like it's gold. Because it is. That kind of openness is the foundation of something lasting, something far deeper than surface attraction or fleeting passion. A man only reveals his heart when he feels your energy is strong enough to hold it. Not perfect, not flawless, but grounded, calm, real. If you've seen this side of him even once, you're not just another chapter. You're the place he starts writing a new story. So don't overlook the quiet moments. Don't dismiss the soft confessions. They carry a weight that loud gestures never will. When a man shows you his truth, he's not just opening up, he's inviting you in. And that invitation is rare. Accept it with grace. When a man begins to see a woman as irreplaceable, something fundamental shifts in how he moves through her life. He no longer reacts out of habit. He starts responding with intention. His choices are no longer guided by what's easiest for him, but by what protects her peace. You'll notice it not in grand declarations, but in small, consistent actions. He becomes mindful of how his presence affects her. He softens his tone, shortens his temper, and pays attention to the energy he brings into her space. Because when a man truly values a woman, her emotional well-being becomes part of his own internal compass. This kind of man knows the world is hard enough. He doesn't want to be another source of noise in her life. He wants to be her quiet, her calm, her place to breathe. That's why he begins to make choices that preserve her emotional safety, even if it costs him convenience or pride. He stops raising his voice during conflict. Not because he's afraid of confrontation, but because he respects her mind and heart too much to wound them. He starts listening more and reacting less, because he understands that peace isn't found in being right, it's found in being present. This is the kind of emotional maturity that doesn't just make a man attractive, it makes him unforgettable. Most women don't realize that when a man starts adjusting his behavior out of care, not control, it's a rare and powerful form of devotion. He might cancel plans when he senses she's overwhelmed, not because he's weak, but because he's tuned in. He might give her space during her storms, not because he's avoiding her, but because he knows when silence is more healing than words. These acts may seem small, but they are not random. They are deeply intentional. They are signs that she has entered a part of his life he guards with clarity and purpose. A man who sees you as the one doesn't just protect you physically. He protects your peace like it's sacred. And that's because, to him, it is. He knows what it means to carry chaos inside. He knows what it feels like to be misunderstood, overlooked, or drained. So when he finds someone whose energy feels like home, he makes it his mission to protect that energy. Not by force, but through presence, through awareness, through love in its most grounded form. If you've ever had a man show up not just when things are easy, but when you're silent, tired, or disconnected, and he still chooses to stay with kindness, not pressure, that's a sign you're more than just someone he cares about. You're someone he respects. Because for a man, peace is not just something he gives. It's something he fights to protect in the woman he sees as his equal. And that kind of devotion is not common. It's earned, it's reserved, and it's real. When a man begins to care about you on a soul level, he stops trying to impress you with words and starts showing you his truth through consistency. He doesn't rely on empty promises, exaggerated stories, or temporary highs to win your heart. Instead, he shows up again and again, especially when no one is watching. This is where most people misunderstand love. They think passion is measured by how loud someone is, how intense the connection feels in the beginning, or how fast things move. But real love, lasting love, is not built in rushes of excitement. It's built in the quiet rhythm of showing up with purpose, with presence, and with emotional reliability. Consistency is not boring. It's security. It's the language of someone who's serious about you. When a man makes you feel emotionally safe, he won't disappear when he gets busy, nor will he shift his tone depending on his mood. He stays grounded. He communicates. He makes the effort to stay close even when life pulls him in other directions. This doesn't mean he's perfect. It means he's emotionally invested. His attention isn't performance. It's intentional. He's not addicted to the chase because he's not trying to win a game. He's building something real. And real love doesn't require drama to stay alive. It requires truth, effort, and follow through. When a man values you, he remembers the little things. Not to impress you, but because he listens. He pays attention to what makes you feel seen, not just what makes you smile. He shows up for the tough conversations, the quiet evenings, and the unspoken needs. That's because consistency isn't about doing the big things once. It's about doing the small things always. He wants you to feel secure, not confused. And he knows that if you're questioning where you stand with him, he's already losing your trust. So he removes the guesswork. He replaces mixed signals with clarity, hot and cold energy with steady warmth. And the reason he does it isn't because he's trying to prove himself. It's because he's already chosen you in his heart. This kind of consistency is rare because it requires discipline. It demands emotional maturity. It takes a man who knows the value of emotional safety because he's either lived without it or fought hard to find it. So when he gives it to you, don't take it lightly. Consistency is the quiet way a man says, "You matter." It's the unspoken vow that he's not going to love you just when it's easy, but especially when it's hard. If a man is consistent with you, not just in actions, but in tone, energy, and presence, he's not auditioning for attention, or he's building a foundation. And that kind of love doesn't fade. It deepens, it strengthens, it lasts. When you find it, don't second guess it. Stand in it with confidence, because you've touched something most never will. The kind of love that doesn't need to be chased, because it never runs. When a man begins to envision you in his future, it's not just about affection, it's about alignment. His words shift. His actions align with long-term intent. He begins to plan, not just for himself, but with you in mind. You'll notice it in the small ways first. He asks for your opinion on decisions that don't immediately involve you. He includes you in thoughts about the next year, the next season, the next move. Not to test your interest, but because you've become part of the blueprint he's quietly building. That kind of inclusion isn't casual. It's calculated from the heart. When a man sees you as the one, he doesn't just share his time, he shares his vision. This is when the relationship moves beyond attraction. He starts to consider what life would look like with you beside him. Not just in moments of fun, but in the daily rhythm of living. He invites you into his dreams, his doubts, his fears about the future, not to burden you, but because your presence makes those things feel lighter. He wants to know what you think, how you feel, and whether your values align with his path. It's no longer about chemistry. It's about compatibility, depth, direction. Men don't do this for just anyone. They might show interest. They might flirt, compliment, even spend time. But when they start mentally placing you in the chapters they haven't even written yet, that's different. That's real. It means your presence is not just meaningful, it's stabilizing. He no longer sees his future as just his own. He starts using words like "we" without noticing. He imagines celebrations, struggles, decisions, and you're always there in the background of those thoughts. This is not fantasy. It's alignment with purpose. And it only happens when a man feels deeply connected, deeply respected, and deeply inspired by who you are, not who you pretend to be, but who you are at your core. This moment is powerful and it's delicate. Because once a man shares his vision with you, he's revealing more than his plans. He's revealing where his heart feels safe. He's letting you into the most guarded part of his life, the future he once believed he had to walk alone. So listen closely when he speaks about what's next. Don't just hear his plans, feel his trust. Because trust is what fuels this kind of openness. And without trust, a man keeps his dreams to himself, protects his plans, and walks alone even when someone's beside him. When he starts including you, he's not just offering you space, he's offering you significance. The future is sacred. To share it is a gesture of commitment far deeper than words or gifts. So, if a man sees you as part of that future, know this. You've already entered the rarest space in his heart. Not the space where he feels passion, but the space where he feels peace. And peace is the place where true love lives. When a man begins bending his own rules for you, it's not just affection, it's a declaration. Because men have boundaries. They have comfort zones, routines, habits they've held onto for years. These aren't random. They're built from survival, identity, and control. Most men live within them without question. But when a woman enters his life and begins to quietly shift how he feels about himself and the world around him, he starts breaking his own patterns. Not because he has to, but because he wants to. That's when you know you've touched something deeper than attraction. You've reached his core. A man who sees you as the one will go against what he once believed he'd never compromise on. He'll open spaces he once kept closed. He'll do things he told himself he didn't need, didn't want, or didn't believe in, because suddenly, your presence makes those things feel worth it. And it's not about control or persuasion. It's about resonance. Your energy makes him rethink his limitations. He starts to question the walls he's built, not out of pressure, but from the quiet realization that those walls are now blocking something precious, something he never saw coming. You may notice it when he softens where he once stood firm, when he says yes to things he would have rejected, when he lets go of rigid routines or outdated beliefs just to be closer to you, to meet you where you are. These moments are not just romantic, they are revolutionary, because no man shifts his inner code for someone he doesn't respect. He won't risk his pride, his time, or his peace for just anyone. But for the woman who awakens something rare inside him, change becomes effortless, natural, inspired. This is not about him becoming someone else. It's about him becoming more of who he truly is because of the space you hold, a safe space, a real space, a space where he can evolve without fear of judgment. Men don't just fall for the woman who excites them. They fall for the woman who challenges them to grow and gives them the freedom to do it without shame. That is a love that breaks patterns, not boundaries. It heals without forcing. It expands without demanding. When he starts bending his rules, he's showing you that you matter more than his past, more than his pride, more than his need to stay the same. That's not weakness. It's strength. The kind of strength that chooses love over ego, that chooses growth over comfort, that chooses you, not just in words, but in transformation. And that choice is everything, because it means he doesn't just want to be with you. He wants to become better beside you. And that desire, when genuine, is the clearest sign that you are not just another part of his life. You are the turning point in it. When a man feels deeply connected to you, even conflict becomes sacred. It's no longer about proving who's right. It's about preserving the bond. He doesn't approach disagreements with the goal of winning. He approaches them with the fear of losing what truly matters, your trust, your respect, your connection. That fear doesn't make him weak. It makes him aware, emotionally intelligent, intentional. Because when a man sees you as the one, he doesn't fight to protect his pride. He fights to protect the relationship. You'll notice it in the way he pauses when things get heated. He doesn't speak just to react. He speaks to resolve. He doesn't attack or withdraw. He leans in, not to dominate, but to understand. He listens more than he talks. And when he talks, it's not to hurt you with sharp words or careless tones, but to meet you in a place of truth. That is not common. That is not performative. That is emotional mastery born from love. Because any man can raise his voice. Any man can storm out, shut down, or say what he later regrets. But only a man who values your presence more than his ego will slow down, breathe through the discomfort, and stay soft even in hard moments. This kind of emotional maturity is rare. It doesn't mean he never gets frustrated or angry. It means he doesn't let those emotions destroy the connection he's built with you. He values the relationship more than the relief of being right. He doesn't seek to punish you with silence or guilt. He seeks to repair, to reconnect, to return to peace, not just for his own comfort, but because your emotional safety matters to him on a deep level. That kind of care is not temporary. It's not surface. It's rooted in a man who has done the work to rise above his emotional impulses, and who now channels that strength into the way he loves. When a man fights fairly, it doesn't mean the conflict disappears. It means the conflict doesn't damage what's most important. He holds your heart with steady hands, even when his own emotions are rising. He watches his words, not to hide, but to honor. He takes responsibility, not to appease, but to rebuild. And he apologizes, not to end the argument, but to begin the healing. That kind of conflict resolution is more powerful than passion, because it means he sees you not as a challenge to overcome, but as a partner to protect, even in the middle of disagreement. A man who fears losing your heart will never fight to break it. He will fight to keep it safe, even when the conversation is uncomfortable. That's how you know you're not just another woman in his life. You are the one he's willing to grow for, the one he's willing to unlearn old habits for, the one he chooses peace with over and over again. And that choice reveals everything. When a man lets down his emotional walls and reveals the playful, childlike part of himself, he's not just being silly, he's being real. This side of him doesn't come out for just anyone. It's the most unguarded version, the part he usually hides behind years of self-protection, discipline, and expectations. But when he feels emotionally safe with you, when he trusts you not to judge or diminish that softness, his inner child begins to emerge. You'll see it in the way he laughs without filter, teases without fear, plays without shame. He becomes light, open, free. And that freedom is a sign of deep emotional intimacy. Most men live in a world where being serious is synonymous with being respected. They are conditioned to lead, to perform, to stay composed. Joy becomes a luxury, not a right. So they bury it. They grow up fast. They stop playing. They forget what it feels like to let go. But when a man meets someone who feels like home, that light inside him flickers back on. Not because he's immature, not because he wants to escape responsibility, but because he finally feels safe enough to be fully human. He doesn't need to wear the armor anymore. Around you, he can breathe. This version of him, the unfiltered, spontaneous, laughter-filled version, is rare. It only surfaces in environments free from control and criticism. When a woman sees and accepts this part of him, she's not just seeing another layer. She's witnessing the rawest form of trust. It's in the way he sings out loud when he thinks you're not watching, the way he dances in the kitchen or turns small moments into games. It's in the way he opens up space for fun without apology. That playfulness isn't a distraction from depth. It's an extension of it. Because joy is vulnerability. And for a man to express that kind of joy with you, it means he no longer fears being seen as soft. When a man is able to show his inner child, he is healing in your presence. He is reconnecting with the part of himself that the world told him to suppress. He is remembering that love doesn't have to be heavy. That closeness doesn't have to be serious all the time. That intimacy can also be light, messy, and full of laughter. This is not just connection, it is transformation. And you are the catalyst. So if he lets you see that playful side, don't dismiss it, don't overlook it. Don't treat it like it's less than his strong, serious self. That lightness is just as sacred. It means you've reached a part of him no one else did, a place untouched by performance, a place where he is no longer guarded but grounded, not in perfection, but in trust. And that kind of connection doesn't just happen. It's rare, it's earned, and it's one of the clearest signs that you are not just close to his heart, you've touched his soul. When a man begins to open up emotionally, showing you not only his joy but also his fears, his doubts, and his silent battles, it's not weakness unfolding. It's trust being poured out in its purest form. It means he believes that your presence is strong enough to hold the parts of him that even he struggles to carry. Men are taught to endure in silence, to hide their pain, to wear masks of strength while their insides ache. But when he starts to let those masks fall, not because he's collapsing, but because he's safe, you are witnessing something sacred. You are witnessing the unraveling of everything he's been taught to bury. And in that unraveling, he is choosing you not just as a partner, but as a sanctuary. He may not always have the words to explain what he feels. He might stumble through vulnerability, expressing himself through silence, irritation, or even withdrawal. But that too is a language of a man trying to unlearn the belief that he must always be stoic to be loved. Your patience with his emotional unlearning is not just kindness, it's power. When you don't shame him for not having it all together, when you don't push him to perform healing on your timeline, you are creating the very atmosphere where healing becomes possible. Because men don't blossom under pressure, they bloom under acceptance. And it's important to remember, emotional intimacy with a man isn't always loud. It's not always a dramatic pouring out of tears and confessions. Sometimes it looks like quiet moments of stillness, sitting beside you without speaking but feeling understood, letting you into his routines, sharing his world without needing grand declarations. Sometimes emotional intimacy is built in the unsaid, in what he doesn't hide from you anymore. The way he lets you see him tired, defeated, or unsure, not performing, not fixing, just existing, and trusting that his presence is enough. If you respond to that presence with respect, not control, with grace, not judgment, with love, not fear, you'll begin to see him become more than he's ever been. Because when a man feels emotionally safe, he doesn't just stay, he grows. He becomes softer, yet stronger, more gentle, yet more grounded, more open, yet more loyal. The connection deepens, not because it was forced, but because it was nurtured. And that depth isn't just felt in words, it's seen in how he prioritizes you, protects you, and places you at the center of his emotional world. This kind of emotional intimacy isn't built overnight. It's a slow, sacred unfolding. But when a man begins to trust you with his full self, you're no longer just someone he cares about. You become the mirror where he sees his truest self reflected, unfiltered, unafraid, and finally free. That's when love stops being a performance and becomes a safe place where both souls can rest, rise, and return to themselves. Emotional safety is the soil where masculine devotion grows. When a man feels emotionally unsafe, he may still show up, but his presence will be guarded. He will calculate his words, suppress his instincts, and keep parts of himself sealed away, not out of cruelty but out of survival. But when he feels emotionally safe, something transformative happens. He begins to relax into himself. He starts leading not from a place of fear, but from a place of confidence and clarity. That kind of emotional freedom doesn't just affect how he relates to you, it affects how he moves through the world. He becomes more decisive, more ambitious, more purpose-driven, because he knows there is one space in his life where he's not being judged, not being policed, not being manipulated. He knows there's one place where he is chosen, not for how perfectly he performs, but for how purely he shows up. Emotional safety is not created through intensity, demands, or emotional pressure. It's built through consistency, peace, and the quiet power of non-reactive presence. When a man says something vulnerable, how you respond echoes louder than the words themselves. If you mock him, question his manhood, or use his vulnerability as a weapon during conflict, you sever a thread of trust that's difficult to repair. But when you listen without trying to fix, without interrupting, without projecting your own fear onto him, he begins to understand that he doesn't have to earn peace. He can simply be and still be loved. The deepest kind of bond between a man and a woman isn't created through constant conversation or physical attraction. It's created through the safety of unspoken understanding. When he knows that silence with you doesn't mean danger but rest. When he knows that being misunderstood won't lead to chaos, but to curiosity. When he knows that your presence won't add to his burden but lighten it. That's when he gives you access to the places no one else sees. And once he gives you that access, how you handle it determines the future of the connection. To hold space for a man is not to coddle him, it's to believe in his strength while honoring his humanity. It's to challenge him with love, not shame. It's to support his growth without demanding it on your terms. That balance is rare, and that's why it's powerful. When you become a woman who can offer that, you don't chase commitment. Commitment chooses you. Not because you asked for it, but because you became the peace he never knew he needed. A man who feels emotionally safe does not drift. He grounds himself in the presence of the woman who gave him room to feel, room to grow, room to lead. And in that space, love stops being a transaction and becomes a deep spiritual exchange, where masculine devotion meets feminine radiance and the bond between them becomes unshakable. A woman who understands her power never begs for attention, approval, or affection. She does not chase because she is deeply connected to her own worth. She does not manipulate because she knows her energy speaks louder than words. She does not argue to be seen because she understands that presence, not performance, earns respect. A woman in her power becomes a mirror, reflecting truth, depth, and stability. And a man who is ready will recognize that reflection and rise to meet it. Not because she asked, but because her energy demanded it. Because when you embody emotional mastery, you shift the entire dynamic. You stop reacting and you start leading silently from within. True feminine power is not loud or aggressive. It is still grounded and unwavering. It is the strength to walk away when you are not valued, the grace to remain composed when provoked, and the wisdom to protect your peace like a sacred altar. Men do not stay because you beg. They stay because you awaken something in them that the world tried to bury: honor, protection, direction, and devotion. When a woman stops trying to convince a man of her value and starts showing up in full alignment with her truth, everything changes. She becomes magnetic. Not because of what she says, but because of what she no longer tolerates. A woman who knows how to regulate her emotions becomes rare. She doesn't explode. She doesn't punish. She doesn't guilt. She communicates from a place of calm because her self-worth isn't tied to someone else's approval. She doesn't seek to control because she doesn't fear abandonment. She doesn't pretend because she's not performing for love. She's already chosen herself. And that self-choosing energy, that unapologetic self-acceptance, is what draws a man in and keeps him loyal, not out of obligation, but reverence. When a man encounters a woman who no longer operates from wounds, but from wisdom, he is faced with a choice: evolve or be left behind. Because she no longer negotiates with confusion. She no longer entertains potential. She's not impressed by charm or overwhelmed by silence. She reads energy, watches consistency, and makes decisions from alignment, not loneliness. She doesn't try to fix or rescue. She holds space, then steps back to observe. And if he is ready, he'll meet her there. Not because she forced him to, but because he sees the value in a woman who leads herself. You don't have to be perfect to be powerful. You only need to be clear. Clear in your standards, clear in your boundaries, clear in your self-love. That clarity creates safety. That safety creates depth. And that depth creates devotion. A woman who chooses herself becomes unforgettable, not because of what she gives, but because of what she no longer settles for. She becomes the quiet storm that changes everything. Not by force, but by being the woman who no longer abandons herself to keep someone else. The moment you stop begging for love is the moment your power begins to rise. When you no longer bend yourself into shapes to fit someone else's comfort, you begin to honor the sacredness of your own presence. The woman who stops chasing begins to attract not only attention, but alignment. She no longer whispers her worth to those who refuse to listen. She no longer pours into empty cups or shrinks herself to avoid being alone. Because the truth is, loneliness doesn't come from being by yourself. It comes from abandoning yourself while trying to hold someone else. And once you taste the peace that comes from standing fully in your truth, you'll never trade it again for temporary connection. There is something undeniable about a woman who moves with emotional maturity. She doesn't retaliate. She doesn't try to be louder to be heard. She simply withdraws her energy from anything that threatens her inner calm. She knows that silence speaks more powerfully than words ever could. When a man cannot reach you emotionally with manipulation, guilt, or confusion, he is forced to face himself. That is your power, not in how much you give, but in how clearly you discern when it is no longer worth giving. You are not here to convince someone to value you. You are here to remember that your value is never dependent on their recognition. When you stop chasing, you create space. Space for a man to step into his responsibility. Space for clarity to replace chaos. Space for you to rise back into your wholeness. You begin to see that being chosen means nothing if you have to lose yourself to earn it. You start choosing peace over patterns, dignity over desperation, and truth over temporary validation. And in that space, your energy shifts. You no longer tolerate mixed signals, emotional inconsistency, or lukewarm effort, because now you understand your softness is a gift, but it must be protected. Your heart is pure, but it must be honored. And your time is sacred, but it must be matched with real presence. You become untouchable to men who seek to drain, distract, or devalue, because you've learned that love isn't proven through pain, and connection isn't maintained through self-sacrifice. The woman who no longer runs after approval begins to walk with intention. Her boundaries are no longer threats, they are declarations. Her silence is no longer weakness. It is her strength echoing in a world that expects her to explain herself. And the man who truly sees her will not be threatened by her power. He will be drawn to it, not to control it, but to rise within it. There is no need to perform, no need to chase, no need to beg. The right energy will never require you to abandon yourself. The love meant for you will recognize the woman who chose herself, not because she had to, but because she finally remembered she was never meant to do anything else. The woman who chooses herself rewrites the rules of her life. She no longer asks, "Am I enough?" because she knows she was never meant to beg for what she was born to embody. She doesn't look for permission to exist fully. She walks into every room with quiet certainty, not because she seeks attention, but because she no longer hides her light to make others feel comfortable in their shadow. She has unlearned the lie that her worth must be proven, and now she stands as the living proof of her own value. Her strength is not in how loud she is, but in how deeply rooted she's become in her truth. She's done shrinking, she's done chasing, she's done proving, and in that she becomes magnetic. When a woman stops pouring herself into empty spaces, she begins to overflow in all the right places. Her energy stops being a reaction and becomes a vibration. She attracts not because she tries, but because she simply is. She no longer runs after breadcrumbs, because she understands that a starving heart will accept anything, but a healed soul will wait for what is whole. She's no longer fooled by sweet words unbacked by real action. She watches, she listens, she discerns. She knows that her time is not something to be wasted. Her body is not something to be accessed without reverence, and her love is not something to be earned through performance. It is to be matched with presence. There is a power in her softness now, not because it is weak, but because it is intentional. She chooses to be kind, not because she fears being disliked, but because she values peace over proving. She's not afraid to walk away. She's not afraid to start over. She's not afraid to be alone, because solitude has become her sanctuary, not her punishment. And from that space she rises, not to chase a man, but to chase purpose. Not to impress others, but to impress upon herself the truth that she is enough. Even when no one says it, even when no one shows it. She refuses to compete for attention that was never rooted in respect. She refuses to water dead plants hoping they'll bloom. She no longer gives explanations to people who are committed to misunderstanding her, because her life is no longer about being liked. It's about being real, being whole, being aligned. She knows her worth isn't proven in how much pain she can tolerate for love. It's proven in how boldly she can walk away from anything that costs her her peace. This woman, the one who no longer chases, is not bitter. She's free. She is no longer trying to be chosen because she already chose herself. And in doing so, She doesn't just change her life, she changes her frequency, and at that level, only the real, the honest, the present, and the worthy can meet her. Everything else falls away. There comes a moment when a woman no longer waits to be seen. She sees herself. She no longer waits to be chosen. She selects herself.